Hello. Good
Welcome,
afternoon.
welcome.
Thank
Good
you.
afternoon. We will get started in a few minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we're waiting on a couple more people. Also, just to give all the teams a heads up, in the beginning, we're going to be going around to each team and giving sort of like a little overview update of sort of what you've been doing. So just giving you guys a heads up so I don't just, be like, hey, let's all give updates and, no one's prepared. So just wanted to put that out there real quick. Again, we'll be starting in 1 minute. So. Awesome. Well, it's 4:05, so let's get started. This is week 5 of the fellowship program. We're officially halfway through. Last week we had a great workshop with speakers from Georgia Tech, student founders. And this week we have a fabulous speaker talking about the business thesis and how it evolves over the course of your startup. But before we get into that, first, I wanted to get a 30-second intro, sort of elevator pitch updates from each team, just to get started and to give Andrew a little bit more context for what we're about. So who wants to get started? Okay, that's what I expected. So I'm just going to call in someone. I'm going to call in my team, Aiden.
Yeah, so we're HitSnag. We're email shortcuts to productivity tools. We actually just launched a while ago, and we're about to get featured in the newsletter, so everyone gets a coupon. And we're currently reaching out to get our initial users and get feedback and make sure they're actually using the product and love it enough. And just like talk to users. We're trying to talk to at least like 3 people a week in calls, and then get feedback from like in other areas. Like at least 10 times a week.
Awesome. Who wants to go next? Braxton, you want to go?
Absolutely. I'm Braxton. I'm the CEO of Cheers. Cheers is an alternative social network that has the benefits of social networking without the unintended negative consequences on mental health. I currently have 440 users. We launched in December. And this week I've been doing customer discovery. I've done 30 interviews this week. And I'm debating whether I should pivot or just change the product or where we should go from here. So kind of on the in between.
Awesome stuff. And who wants to follow Braxton? Who's next?
Yeah, I'll go next. So I'm Aaron. Our company is Sane Solutions. We are in the process of making our minimum viable product. We have a database of all the chemistry researchers in the US. We are using that database to make matches between needs for hiring and the availability in the job market.
Awesome. Does anybody want to volunteer next? That's a no. Fanshi, do you guys want to go?
Yeah, I can go. We've mostly been doing customer discovery, and we're trying to figure out if we're going to be focusing on female sports fans or like female players in general. So our app is kind of a community app for people interested in sports. Yeah, so that's what we're up to.
Awesome. And I see Insight has also posted something in the chat. I'll just read it out loud. Hi all, this is Team Insight. I'm experienced. Okay, I want to skip that. We have been actively conducting interviews in the past 2 weeks, and we plan to start building the MVP. We have collected the essential data sets needed for our project, and we want to build some case studies for some of the interviewees we have talked to in the past. So with that, I think that covers all the teams. Wait, is 808 here? Okay, all right. So with that, I think we can get started with the workshop. So Mr. Barnes, I'm gonna give a quick intro real quick. So he did his undergrad at Emory, MB at London Business School, has a ton of experience in startups in the industry as well before committing to Safely full-time. And what Safely does is it provides insurance for Airbnb and Vrbo properties. So with that, I'm gonna pass it on to Mr. Bates, CEO and co-founder of Safely.com.
Well, hello, thank you. We're going to talk about testing your business hypothesis. So I'm going to tell you about our whole long story, but feel free to ask questions along the way, because there are certain things I've done that might really resonate with exactly what you're trying to figure out right now. So I'm going to talk about all of the different inputs that gave me insight into what we should be building, how much money we wasted on things that we should not have built, but we did, or we tried to. And so please ask questions as I go along. But first I'll just start off telling a little bit more about what we do. Yes, it's insurance for Airbnb and VRBO rentals, but our whole mission really at Safely.com is to help a homeowner feel comfortable with this internet stranger who's staying in their house, and they come through VRBO, through Booking.com, through Airbnb, through a call center. Anyway, it's just like a hotel. These homes are listed on all of the booking sites, but the one common piece is you're letting an internet stranger into your house. They're sleeping in your bed. They're using your dishes. They're at your kitchen table, and that's kind of weird. And so we started Safely to make that a little bit less weird. So we answer the question of who's staying in my house, and we do that with a background check. We check for felonies, we check sex offender lists, we check terrorist watch list, we check money laundering lists. We have a database of bad guests, people who have destroyed homes and should never rent again without the right supervision. And then we built an insurance policy. So we cover up to $1 million of damage to the home structure. any contents that are in the home, and bodily injury. So anything goes wrong that's related to the liability tied to that reservation, well, we pay for it. And we have a $0 deductible. So anything from stained sheets all the way up to $1 million. So that could be a massive bodily injury. The whole house burns down. You leave the bathtub running and it leaks down like 7 more stories underneath your unit, or your guest does that in your house. And we cover all of that liability. And just so you know about where we are, first of all, we're across the street, when there is a street, at the ATDC, so 5th and Spring Streets. And we're a team of 9 people. We have 5 part-time developers or contracted developers, but 9 full-time people. And we incorporated in 2013. I'll tell you more about that story and how we grew. But we finished last year with $3 million of revenue. We're at the $4.5 million revenue rate, and things are growing really fast. We should end the year at the $10 million revenue rate. We've raised $1.5 million of venture funding. Then we borrowed $2.2 million. And now I'm working on a Series A, the first big round of financing. I'm working on that. And we're raising about $13 to $15 million. We'll see how it goes. But I'm here in San Francisco today, and I'm here for 3 months. So I'm coming here until we close this round. Even if no one meets in person, that's fine. I'm still here because there's got to be more money by sitting here than in Atlanta. So here I am. So I want to talk about my first real job. And that was after I finished my undergraduate degree. I had a few startups then, but then I went to the consulting firm. I went to McKinsey in Atlanta, and I got to be in the travel practice. So I only worked with travel clients, which seems really, really relevant to what I built. And there was a lesson that I learned by working with travel companies, and that is that travel companies act more like asset managers than they do like hospitality companies. You think about the Ritz-Carlton, or you think of Delta or Virgin American, and you think about how they're going to take care of you and give you a great experience. But when you look at the big decisions they're making, like the big management decisions they're making, they're really based on, how do I take this asset, this Boeing 767, or this luxury property that's 43 stories tall, and how do I take this asset and monetize it, get a free cash flow from it? Every decision, like just think about an airline. How many seats do we put in? How cramped are the seats? How many first class seats do we have? How do we create a loyalty program to get people to pay more per seat? How do we clean the airplane faster? Every decision is about, how do we earn more money for this asset that we have to service the debt on? And just that lens of thinking about the whole travel industry differently, not about, do you get a cookie when you arrive, or what type of shampoo is in the bathtub? Like, that's what I think about when I think about a hotel. Or did I get upgraded to economy comfort instead of being in a middle seat in the back? That's what I think about you as the main value proposition of a travel company. But just seeing the executives think like asset managers about big decisions rather than a hospitality nice person is what really stuck with me. And then I had another experience, and that other experience was a former boss of mine, also a professor. I worked at Emory after I graduated, and I went to Emory undergrad. And this professor I really admired in the business school, as smart as can be, but he bought a second house in Wilmington, North Carolina. So near Wrightsville Beach is where Dawson's Creek, way back in the day, was filmed, like on that road, One Tree Hill. Like during that time, there were like all these TV shows that were being filmed in Wilmington. He had a beautiful, nice house, and he used it maybe once a year. And it was just so painful. He let me stay, and it was just an amazing, great house, but then he was only using it once a year. That means 50 plus weeks were empty every single year. Here it is. It's hard enough for us to buy a first house in our society. You know, my wife and I just got one a year ago. It takes a long time to figure out how to get a house. And then this person got 2 homes. So he must have been a little bit more sophisticated than average, a little smarter than average. Plus, I knew him, and he absolutely is smarter than average. And then he's just letting it sit there and make no money. And that just like was horrible to me, especially looking at the whole world as an asset manager. And it's like, how can you have this $400,000, $600,000? I have no idea how much it was. How can you have this asset and just let it sit there? And if you're paying $15,000, $20,000 a year to hold this house, well, that also means you're paying $20,000 a week to stay at this place. Like, if you gave me $20,000 a week to go on vacation, I probably wouldn't stay in that house. I'd live it up, and I do quite nicely. So those are the 2 things I just started to solve. Then I went to business school, so was really lucky to be part of a program like you're in, and all the other programs you're able to work with when you're in school. And we had an entrepreneurship summer school at London Business School, and we did the exact same thing that I heard all of you doing. I interviewed hundreds of homeowners and guests during a summer period. We had a lot of mentors, and I went into entrepreneurship summer school actually thinking about what the need of a guest were. And the guest was staying at all these random homes that didn't have a brand. So what I wanted to do, the first idea was, I'm going to buy up a bunch of homes and put a brand on them, just like a Marriott or a Grand Hyatt. So you know what you're getting when you're renting these homes. There's demand for these homes. I want to help you know, as the traveler, what you're about to get. And fortunately, that didn't happen. This was 2007 when I went through this entrepreneurship summer school. And the next year, there's a pretty big hit to our economy. If, let's say, I would have gotten $1 billion portfolio of property, within a year, that $1 billion portfolio would have been worth about $600,000. Yeah, that wouldn't have gone over well. So that was a high risk model, but it was solving a need that made sense to me. But during that program, I switched when I started to talk to more homeowners, and I just heard them say over and over, it's like, of course I want a second home, but I'm not going to rent it. That's crazy. But then we have all these guests who want to rent it. And so that's when I started to figure out, what would it take to allow strangers to rent to one another. And that's the problem that needs to be solved. So the first version that we started was a website called Trusted Guests. So we're building a whole platform, and we actually launched three months before Airbnb launched. So relevant idea. It wasn't a copycat idea. For example, one of the co-founders, the CTO, Nate, he started following me on Twitter, like, because I was the leader, for a booking platform, or at least I'd done enough to get the attention of 2 other people who are no different than any one of you right now. Everyone was really like, this is so early. And the way I approached it with Trusted Guests is, I thought if we worked with groups that already trusted one another, now they'd rent homes to each other. So partnering with Emory alums, Georgia Tech alums, we had MIT as a partner, so MIT alums could rent to one another. And McKinsey, where I was working, or where I used to, their alums could rent their homes to one another, because that makes sense. Like, I don't want to rent it to internet strangers, but I'm fine with someone who went to Georgia Tech, because we probably know someone in common, and I think they'll treat my home with a little bit more respect. And you see this in the back of alumni magazines. Homes are available there. Like, you can rent my home, especially a decade ago. You can rent my home, and because people trust that, versus just listing it on Expedia or something crazy like that. And so that's how we started. And then Airbnb started. And as you know, Airbnb did quite well. Where our 2 models were different was we were going after some groups like Georgia Tech alums. They're making good money. I know you always want to make more, but you're going to be fine as long as you get your job, you keep going on your track. You're going to be fine. You're not living paycheck to paycheck if you get a good post Georgia Tech job, post MIT job, post McKinsey job. The groups I was going after. So what that meant is the homeowners, to get them to onboard, it was hard because intellectually they knew that, oh yeah, I would love to rent to these people. I know I should, but they didn't need to. Whereas Airbnb started in Manhattan. And even if you work for a hedge fund in Manhattan, like everyone lives paycheck to paycheck because it's so expensive there. And so it was easier to get the hosts mobilized on the Airbnb model where they're starting in New York than it was for us where we were starting in Wilmington, North Carolina, the Jacksonville, these destinations that were about 5 hours away from urban areas. Because if we all buy a home, like a vacation home, we're not going to buy it in Atlanta. We live here already. We're going to get it. That's a 4 hour, 5 hour trip away. And by the way, once we get a second home, it's probably going to be nice, but it'll need a few things to be fixed before we can actually rent it. So imagine someone in the trusted guest platform. They need to first be motivated enough to do some work. Then they have to travel to their other place. They have to get it ready. They have to set up the infrastructure to get a cleaner, to clean it between stays, stuff like that. Whereas with Airbnb, they just needed to get a second room cleaned. Trust wasn't as big of a deal as they thought it would be. Like people were price sensitive. So like I can stay in New York for $90 instead of $290 in a cheap hotel. So I'm going to, like, there's demand. And it was okay to rent a second home or a second bedroom in your home. So if I were to tell you that by 6 o'clock, there's going to be a guest coming to your house in Manhattan, you'd be like, I can be ready. I'll walk a block, I'll buy new sheets, I'll go clean that extra room, and I'm ready. And I'm motivated because I'm living paycheck to paycheck. Whereas for us, it was like, hey, there's a guest coming at 6 o'clock. I'm like, I can't even get to Hilton Head by 6 o'clock. And I have to fix up that bathroom. Like there's no way anyone can stay there. And I have to blah, blah, blah. And so we couldn't get any homeowners to join, even though intellectually they said they wanted to. And so unfortunately, that was a multi-year pivot. So the timeline here, 2007 was Entrepreneurship Summer School and Business School. 2008, I graduated and we launched this marketplace. We went until 2013 trying to start that marketplace. So that was a long time with no money. And we raised $215,000 from a hotelier who liked what we were doing, but we didn't get very far. And so in 2013, at the end of 2013, that's when we switched our model. We talked to the founder of VRBO or HomeAway, and he said, I love what you're doing, but you don't need to build a marketplace and compete with us. We have a marketplace. We have transactions happening. Why don't you just make all of our transactions a little bit safer, a little bit better, and then make Airbnbs better and safer, and then make TripAdvisor, make everyone else, make their reservations safer. So that's when we switched to the model, like taking this big business model, going down to what we were excellent at, which was helping that homeowner feel comfortable with who is staying in their house and what happens when something goes wrong. And that's when we changed the business model to where we are today with safely.com. Any questions on that? Then I'll talk about scaling the business. But we had a couple hypotheses that didn't quite play out.
How did you finally make that call to go from, trusted guest to safely?
I think it was just, thank you, Braxton. I think it was from just thinking through, like, it was more looking at the technology that we had that was working the way we wanted it to. And then realizing, like, wouldn't it be amazing if you took this whole to-do list and then you only have 10% of it to do? And that was like, That was so refreshing. We also entered a contest, and there's this travel technology conference that happens every year, and they have an innovation contest. It's the organization that runs it is called Focusrite, but they had an innovation contest, and we entered, and we won $250,000 from a really good venture firm, General Catalyst, and it was structured as an investment. But when we entered that contest, that's when we decided we think the most compelling type of application we can put together is the safely.com model. And so then we pitched it and we won the contest. We came away with $250,000 and was like, all right, we never have to think about building a marketplace ever again. And it was a great feeling, just because the problem felt a lot more solvable. The other thing we'd done at the same time is we were running another company because we didn't know what would actually work. And that company was called Hotel Upgrade, completely unrelated to what we were building with vacation home rentals. It was a way for people traveling to a hotel, business travelers, consultants who are going week after week, or teams going to the same hotel. And we helped them aggregate all of the nights that they were going to spend, like 5 people, 5 weeks. That's each person represents 25 weeks, 5 people, that's 125 weeks. You report all those nights to us, we'll book them for you, but then we'll say, hey, hotel, we have 125 nights, and we'd like free bottles of wine when we arrive, we'd like free breakfast, we'd like bonus points, in your loyalty program. And again, the concept was good because no one's been able to aggregate all those random stays, even though they're all at the same hotel. And the hotel wants to reward that type of traveler, the ones who come to their hotel, not the ones who stay at any random Hyatt across the world. And then you happen to show up at their hotel, and then you have to give them all the perks, even though they're only spending, 1 night with you. And so conceptually it worked, but again, we couldn't get traction for it. We built a nice app, but still couldn't get traction. So all at the same time, my co-founder took over Hotel Upgrade to try to run that. Then we got rid of Trusted Guests, and then I got to run with Safely, and it was so much more simple. And I know right now a lot of you are, as you're thinking, like, how will I put this all together? You're going to have to do a side hustle. You're going to have to experiment with other business models, and it's so distracting. I mean, it's essential, but it's so distracting. And so when I was finally able to not do that, we really were able to accelerate, because I could just think about one thing at a time. No switching costs from one activity to another. What else?
Hi, I had a question too.
Yeah.
We're kind of wondering, how did you make sure that everyone focused on, actually proving that hypothesis instead of just like focusing on the product?
Yeah, I think I could have done a better job of testing hypotheses. I think I did a really good job during that entrepreneurship summer school. And then we did go through a Techstars program where we repeated a lot of those same activities, but we were nicely down the road when we went through the Techstars program. So it was more about optimizing our business model versus like testing like the core hypothesis. The problem with testing a hypothesis is if you're looking for real life feedback and your product is horrible, it's really easy to justify the fact that, well, no one wanted it because the product was bad. Who wants a bad product?
Yeah.
And that's the problem. It's like I could always justify why people weren't signing up because I need to do these 2, 3, 4 more things until this is aspirational or at least interesting enough for even an early adopter of any service. And so I think where we really struggled is the fact that we couldn't build our product fast enough to really test hypotheses. So we'd let a hypothesis stay there for years because we couldn't get the product built.
Yeah.
And so like we couldn't disprove it. And thankfully we didn't, because the market's grown and like clearly there's demand for what we're doing. But in 2008, there wasn't really demand. So maybe it's good that all that technology took a long time. We kept working on an untested hypothesis that looks like delusion, where we're like, why are you
Yeah.
still doing that? And we're like, well, no one's told us we shouldn't, because our product's so bad, we couldn't even show it to them. So we're still going. That might be the wrong way. That's certainly an expensive way of doing it,
Yeah.
but it's inevitable that you'll never have enough resources to put the product out that you want to put out. So you need to think really hard about ways of testing that hypothesis in a more simple way, rather than saying, do you think you like a Mercedes? Well, you kind of have to deliver a Mercedes to someone. Otherwise, they're like, why would I pay 3 times as much as a Honda Civic? Like, I don't get why I would. Well, once you get the Mercedes, you're like, oh yeah, I get it. But then you have to build a whole Mercedes. And so how can you test some of the more fundamental parts of your product so that you can build faster and test it faster? And that to me is the secret, which we didn't solve. But I don't think one is done in isolation of the other.
Yeah.
You can't be spending too much time testing a hypothesis without putting some product or something for people to react to, or some way of collecting data to prove or disprove that hypothesis. So you can't spend all your time on the hypothesis. You can't spend all your time on product either, because you see that over and over, where it's so easy to put your head down and build, and then you're like, I got it, and no one wants it. So
it took a long time, like, to get past, like, yeah. Have you guys hit product market fit?
I think we have. It's really hard to know what that is. Some people say you need $1 million of revenue. Some people say you need 5 customers who aren't like your mom and your dad. But I think we have, in that we have about 150 property manager customers. We're at that $4.5 million revenue rate. We're not worried about whether what we're doing is valuable. Now it's, how do we scale it? How do we build the sales team to sell it? How do we build the right marketing materials? How do we fine tune the product? But like, the fundamental value proposition we provide is, to me, strong enough that we can build a business on it.
Awesome.
Dude,
Thank you
for that advice.
Sure. What else? Well, maybe I can talk. Oh yeah, go ahead. Was that you, Braxton?
Yes. At what point would you say you've tested hypotheses enough to go ahead and start building? Or looking back, what do you think you could have done, like, before building your product to test it first?
Yeah, I remember one really, really good conversation I had that helped me think a lot better. And that's with a random guy. He's in Atlanta. David Miranda is his name. I only knew him, like, I knew someone who knew him, and they brought him to a lunch I had. And he really helped me understand the value of helping the homeowner, like, and understanding that anxiety. So I think 2 things I did well with. One is talking to a lot of people. So I really got to know the space. I really understood what I was doing. But the second is talking to smart people and sharing my idea. So from the very early stages, I was at a business plan competition in Austin, and the CEO of HomeAway, which is now VRBO, he was a judge in that competition. He invited me over to his house and said, let's talk about it, even though at the time I was going to be competitive with him. And he was great. He told me at the beginning, hey, I opened this up. I didn't read it because it looks like you're competing with me. Do you want me to stay or not? And I said, no, I'd love for you to stay. And he gave me really great feedback and invited me over to his house afterwards. It's not because he was stealing my ideas. He's a good guy. And even though he was competitive to me at the time, he was a good guy. And so to me, I like sharing ideas because really what's going to make your businesses work is the execution. The ideas are, some are novel, some aren't, but in general, it's been thought of before, but it's how you put it together, how you get that initial traction, how you build with scarce resources. That's the part that is really, really hard. And so the more smart people you can get thinking about your business, the better. So it's maybe less about testing a hypothesis, but it is more about getting as much input as possible from smart people and not smart people, by the way. And your job is to sort through all that feedback and figure out what makes sense to you and what doesn't, and how does it inform your path, your product, your business model.
You said a couple of times that you talked to a lot of people. I'm sort of curious, how many people in the space that you were interested in, because you mentioned a few of them, were you sort of going in a few different directions and talking to all of those people in those spaces at once? Or were you also pitching to more of the business side people to see, what do you think about this? Where did you focus your efforts, I guess, or did you?
Yeah, I think how it happened is, as I was talking to a lot of like business type people who might be customers or partners, they were like, oh, you need to talk to this guy, or you need to talk to this woman. And so I think they both happened at the same time. One thing I'd really encourage you as students is talk to as many people as you can, because right now you're special as a student, but then you graduate and now you're just unemployed and you're just a regular person. And so take advantage of the fact that you're a student. Everyone wants to help a student. No one wants to help an unemployed person. And the line between those is really, really blurry. But you work that you're a student. I'm a Georgia Tech student, and I'm building this, and I just love to get your thoughts on a couple of things. Everyone will meet with you. Not everyone. You'll slip through some email boxes, but you'll get meetings with pretty much whoever you want. And just have a good 15-minute, 20-minute meeting with them, and then come up with questions. Like, start to build a relationship with them. Find an article and say, hey, I saw this, was thinking of you, or, oh, I need to, do you know a good attorney because I'm going into this type of transaction, or I'm trying to find an intern to help me with this. And they're like, you just reach out and ask for little things. And then all of a sudden you'll build a good relationship. But people will meet with you, and they can be like really, really big people. You think like, why do they want to meet with me? It's because they want to help students, because they wish people had helped them when they were a student, the same way that you could use some help. Okay. Maybe I'd talk a little bit about building the company. So, all right, we had this idea. It's 2013. Let me tell you what happened next. And then we won that $250,000, which was fantastic. So what happened then, end of 2013, is winning that contest gave us enough credibility where we could go to an insurance carrier and say that we'd like to build an insurance policy with you to meet these types of this type of risk, these types of needs. And it is really hard to work with an insurance company because they have billions and billions of dollars under management. And as a startup, like I told you what our revenue is, if we can give them that kind of premium, it's like, that's not very interesting. No one gets a promotion because, by year 4 of a relationship, they brought in $4 million new dollars to a Fortune 200 insurance company. So it was really hard to do that. What we found is, as we met the innovation team at this insurance carriers, we had to convince them, like, it was the same as an investor pitch. This is going to be a big opportunity. There is no data. And by the way, insurance companies love data. If you have no data, then they really can't do much. but this will be a big segment, and we're the ones who are going to make it work for you, or at least we'll be the area, like the company you can trial it with and get to know the space to decide, is this a strategic priority for your insurance carrier? And then it took 2 years to build the insurance policy. They said, don't worry, it'll be 90 days. So here we are, end of 2013. We start meeting with the insurance carrier in January of 2014. And it's a year and 3 quarters before the policy's live. We sign all the contracts and we can actually have a product. And so we're just sitting there. And so we ran out of money because we hired a real developer. We hired, we paid a market rate for a couple of people, and you run through $250,000 pretty fast when you do that. And by the way, we already owed like 80,000 of it to other people already. And so we're in this really tough place where we just had a product, but then we had no money. And we raised a little bit more. We raised $150,000 here. Then we raised, 100 here, like a year later, like just enough. This is how it works in Atlanta. Until you have any significant revenue, you raise just enough to get by. You find an angel investor, they put some money in, but it's not great terms. You never get a round, or at least we never did, a round where you have, here's $2 million, and then you can plan, a 12-month period with $2 million. We never had that. And that made it hard. It made it so we couldn't make as many long-term decisions. It's like, all right, we have to build some technology. Let's get contractors. Let's use a firm instead of hiring a CTO, especially once we ran out of money and we lost our CTO. And so it was pretty rough. Then we went through the TechStars program. It's run by MetLife. And this was kind of our next phase of experimentation or hypothesis testing. And the reason we're at about $1 million of annual revenue when we joined the TechStars program. So that's usually pretty late for a TechStars program. Most companies have 5,000 a month or so. And so we're nicely ahead, running a good book of business. And we went there, though, to figure out how we fit into the insurance world, because we knew we were selling insurance and we were doing background checks, risk scores, but fundamentally we were selling insurance. So what does that mean to us? Does that mean we should partner with MetLife and State Farm and Allstate and all those? Or does it mean we go get some capital and put it behind us and compete with them? And we didn't really come away with too much, except I'd say we're different because of that experience in 3 ways. First way is because we're not afraid of insurance carriers anymore. They might have billions of dollars of assets under management, but they are so slow and everything's stuck in meetings, and they're just, for all the reasons I said, it's hard to get them going. Well, they're also not going to get going in this space until it's like way too late. Or what? Like, we can be massive before we're even interesting to them. So we've got a runway. So I'm just not worried about the big insurance carriers. The second thing we learned is that what we were doing was special. The distribution we were building. So connecting into all the booking sites, connecting into the back office software platforms that property managers and homeowners use to manage their business. That was really valuable, and we didn't realize it before. It's like, we just have to do that so that we can be in business, but it actually was really valuable, and we didn't realize it. And from that, we also realized, well, yes, we can partner with these insurance companies, and we can do a really good job at our very special piece of work, and let them be really excellent at what they do, covering big losses. A tree falls in your house, they'll take care of it. Health insurance, let them do that. But we'll really understand the risks associated with a guest in your house for an average of 4.5 nights. And then since 2018, we've been growing about 100% year over year, which is right at that threshold that investors like to see to be high performing. We've been surprised, going into the Series A coming from Atlanta. where you really have to focus on your margin and like real revenue and growth that's affordable, we've been a little surprised that we have a lot more fundamentals than we ever imagined, because this is a solid business model. We can't, you can't give us $1 of insurance premium and then we give you $4 back. Like, you'll be happy. We'll grow until we run out of money. And since we haven't raised a lot of money, we can't do that. So we have to build a model that's sustainable. And that's definitely being appreciated. And I think that's just a symptom of all of us being in Atlanta, where we just have to be a little bit more rational and sober about our business models than you might see here in Silicon Valley. And because of that, because we had the growth, because we had the cash flow, we were able to borrow $2.2 million from an investor. They got some stock. It's a really high interest rate, 15% interest, which is crazy. But at the same time, we're growing way faster than that. And we only have to give out 3-4% to the company instead of 30% that we would have elsewhere. So it was a good deal, and it definitely got us to the next level. We're 2.5 times where we were when we raised that money. So in hindsight, great. This was exactly what we needed, but now we need a lot more capital so we can expand. What else is on your mind? I know we're starting to run out of time, so I want to make sure everyone's questions get answered, and they can be really specific to what you're building and how it compares with what I built.
So I guess I'll ask one, because I think this might apply to a bunch of the groups here too. You mentioned technology a couple of times, and I am sort of curious. So after your initial phases, now that you are growing, how did those technology growing pains, how did that work for you? And how did you manage, this is where I want to go, this is the technology that I have now and the people that I have to build it, and I don't have money to hire new people. How did that work for you?
Horribly, and it's still going horribly. I just let our tech team go in December. And for like that reason, right now we have a great advisor, but we don't have anyone who's really owning their product. It's like, I'm going to own the full stack, like everything from DevOps to the server, the databases, how it's structured on Amazon Web Services. How does that user experience look? When we get errors, what do they mean? How do we fix them? We haven't found that person since we lost that CTO that we had that we couldn't afford anymore. We haven't solved that. And so we've been working for 2.5 years on version 2. Actually, it's been longer than that, almost 3.5 years. Version 2 of our software is designed, but it's not there yet. And it's so frustrating. And the thing is, now we finally have some money to spend on it, but we're not solving the problem. We're just spending more money. It's the exact same problem. If we had no money, we'd spend no money on it, and we'd have the exact same problem. Now we have some money. We're spending money on it. We're spending $600,000 a year on technology team members, and we're not making a lot of progress. And so, sorry, Aaron, that's the long answer to we haven't solved it yet. I think what you'll see is every company, that still is existing is overperforming in some areas. There's got to be something interesting you're doing to even be working on this right now. And there are going to be areas you overperform on, but then there are other areas where you're underperforming. And that's okay, because you can't overperform on everything. Then you just be a publicly traded company. It would be awesome. So there'll always be strengths and weaknesses. Ours is absolutely, technology is a weakness. And fortunately, we've still been able to grow. We have a great CFO. We call him our human API, where anything that comes in is just done by our CFO, a human, and then we send it back out as if it was done by technology. But nope, he spent all night working on it. Sorry, that's the wrong answer. That's my biggest stress right now is technology and how much we're spending on it compared to how much progress we're making.
No, that was a great answer. I love the fact that you said that. That makes me respect you way more. So thank you.
Sure. And maybe I'd recommend, if you can get a co-founder who is a coder and who can own, like really own the product, that's amazing. I was a solo founder, and then I brought on 2 partners later on, but starting it, I was the only one. None of us are technological. And that is, like, I would say, if you can have a good co-founder, that's the best thing possible. But the worst thing possible is a horrible co-founder, because you lose all desire to keep moving. I mean, just like a relationship, like a great marriage is amazing. A horrible marriage is horrible. And then being by yourself is just fine. Like, maybe not amazing, but it certainly isn't horrible. And so that's how I see it being a founder. Like, yes, it is better to have a co-founder, but you want to have an amazing co-founder. Otherwise, it's better to just be by yourself.
Yeah, I don't want to step on anybody else's time. I'm actually the coder, and my problem is actually the reverse, where I'm not business minded. In fact, I really dislike business a lot. But I am sort of curious. Again, I think it applies to the other teams. Even for me, knowing, like, I am the technology, that's what I'm interested in. There's still a question for me of that application for business is very different. And day-to-day, how the coding works, how you get stuff done. And I'm curious, do you know, how do other people handle that transition from idea to making a working product to a day-to-day useful product?
Yeah, I think it's less to do with business knowledge and more to do with the customer discovery and the empathy that you can have with your customers. So to me, the real difference between the business person and the technology person, if one of them isn't performing well, is the technology person that develops technology for him or herself or for the sake of building the technology is not a good business person. But if they can be building the technology for what other people want, that's all you need, especially early on. You'll monetize it later. And look at how long it took Facebook to monetize, Twitter to monetize. Lots of companies, it took time to monetize, but they're building good technology that people wanted, and they're reacting to what people wanted. And so if you can at least have that mentality that I'm coding and I don't like business, like, we'll figure out the money later, but I want to really figure out, I want to make sure that the technology I'm building is something people want. That's the foundation you can go on. If you get some slimy business person that's like, well, you have to do it this way because, you know, we could then upsell people or we could do this other stuff, like, that's fine. But if you don't have the foundation of something that people want, well, who cares? So I would just say, keep building great product, but make sure it's product for people versus you. And then once you're finding that fit, then go call someone like me and say, let's talk for an hour and let's figure out what the business model is here. I know people want it because I love that stuff. I just get into figuring out how to create business models around problems or around user needs. To me, that's an easy skill. You might think, oh, that's the hard part. I think what you're doing is the hard part. So that's fantastic. Like, that's a great conversation to have. But don't be intimidated by the business process. And also don't hesitate to reach out to people. But if you never build something people want, the business doesn't matter. So product comes first.
So I do have a quick question. So what unexpected thing have you done that led to discovering your customers more? Like, helped like understand them better?
Yeah, I think, like, we went through the rigorous process, the rigorous process of, like, entrepreneurship summer school, all that stuff. But I think going to conferences is what made a big difference, because I would go to a conference for vacation rental managers, and I just go and I talk to everyone. I have drinks with everyone. I just be there, and I just learned so much. I met so many people, and they're the ones that I'm partnering with today. They're the ones who are advising me today. And I just met people in the industry, and it really helps. Like, vacation rental space is pretty small. It's not like going to CES in Las Vegas and like trying to meet people, but you can do that there too. But I really got to understand, the industry's needs as humans, like talking to a property manager, like, here's what I'm doing. What do you think? And it's just pitching what I was doing, 100, 200, 400 times, and getting asked questions. And that's where I really learned from real humans versus in the sterile environment where you are today, which is good right now. But then, with the product, trying to sell it and just talking to people, that's where I learned the most.
All right, thank you.
I think we have time for maybe one more question, if anyone has one. If not, I can jump in. I don't want to. Oh wait, Braxton, were you about to ask something?
Yeah, I kind of had a funny question. I don't know if, yeah, it's an interesting kind of personal question. I'm getting married this summer, and so I was just wondering what your experience is as a CEO and in your marriage with that.
Yeah. So I can, let me talk about some girlfriends who have been around. One who happens to be a child psychiatrist. She called me delusional because I was trying to build this thing, and we weren't getting the traction. She was like, I don't understand how you can not have a timeline around what you're doing. Because, she went to medical school, then she did her fellowship, then she did her residency, then her fellowship. Like, she's like, I know I'm investing, but I know exactly when the payoff is going to be, and I didn't. And so she thought I was delusional. I'm lucky with my wife in that she's an actress, and so she does a lot of speculative work as well. And so she understands the fact that in her job and in my job, you eat what you kill. And if you make revenue, you make revenue. And if you don't, you don't. So she's been really great because when we've been married 4 years. And so I've known her like 5.5 years. So if you do the math, that's like right about when we figured out what we were doing, but we had, $100,000 in a year. And, it's been growing, but she's been here for a lot of that growing. So that, so I think that's a big part of the marriage. It would be nicer if she made a lot of money, because then I don't have to. Like, I am envious of the founders who have a spouse who's a doctor or an attorney, because then it's like, okay, at least our bills are paid for. At least we can stay in this house and get groceries and things like that. So it is a lot more stressful when you're on your own, or you're with someone who's not able to support a whole family. But it is absolutely, it impacts the family. I don't have any, mostly what I'm saying is I'm lucky because she's so okay with what I'm doing. And now it's not luck. Now it's like, well, yeah, of course it's working. So like, this now just my job. But I can tell you it's not always like that. Kind of like Aaron, as we were talking about, like there's a good founder, there's a bad founder, and then or co-founder, and then it's fine being in the middle. Like that other girlfriend would have been, it would have been a rough life until I'm successful. But then, of course, everyone likes you when you're successful. You need someone who's really supportive of this process.
Thank you. I appreciate your honesty there.
Sure.
Now that it's 5 o'clock, just to wrap things up, Mr. Bate, do you have any last piece of advice for the students here?
I mean, really, I think as I think back, the thing that has really helped is just talking to people. Like, don't be afraid of sharing your idea. Ask people questions, ask them what they think. You get it out there, because that feedback loop is so valuable, because you can put your head down and have all the great thoughts. And if they're never built upon, they're going to be really limited. And so I spend a lot of your time talking to other people, partly because when you talk and you say what you're doing, you understand it better too. But you get feedback. Like I said, some of it's horrible. So like, that's fine to hear horrible feedback and to get good feedback. But I talk to so many people, and in that respect, you can share my email address, and you can find me on LinkedIn. Andrew Bate is Andrew.Bate, BATE @safely.com. So just send me a note if I can help at all, or find me on LinkedIn, and maybe I'll be helpful in 2 years or 4 years or whenever. But don't hesitate.
Thank you so much. That was a fantastic talk. I'm sure all the teams, gained a little bit of insight here. So we really appreciate your time. Yeah, I mean, to all the teams here, also let us know if the fellowship team can help you this week, or, over the next few weeks. Feel free to reach out to me or any of your leads. So yeah, with that, I think that was a fantastic talk. Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.